Today we're going to go over how to set up your press to reload 9mm. Okay, I'm going to be showing you how to do it on a Hornady AP press, but essentially it's going to be the same even if you have a single stage. You'll just use a single stage shell plate or whatever brand of shell plate you choose. Okay, first up is the shell plate. On the Hornady press, it is the number 8 shell plate. If you're using Lee or RCBS or whatever, use its respective shell plate. Or if you use a single stage, then the Lee dies will come with the shell holder. And so that's what you're going to use. So we're just going to go ahead and put this on. Okay, next up is going to be the primer insertion stuff. I'm going to show you on the Hornady press. Again, if you're using single stage, then you can do it manually or set up for whatever your respective press is. So I already have the small pistol primer one in there, so that's pretty easy. If you want to change this part out, you just undo the spring right here and put that other one that I showed you in there, and then underneath you unscrew that part, and then you put whatever, if it's a large primer or small primer, then you'll put the respective punch thing into it. So I already have it set up for small pistol primer punch and the small primer punch and the small primer slider thingy. So I'm good to go. Okay, next we're going to assemble the powder thing. We will set it up later for the amount of powder. So stick that in there, stick this guy in there, and then on the other side are 2 screws here that I'm just going to screw in just like that. Okay, now also for the Hornady press, we're going to need the powder dropper in there, which is going to be this guy. So I'm going to pull that out, dump out the rifle one that I had in there, put it in storage, throw the new one in there, and then replace this in there, and rescrew this in, and then I'll replace the spring. Okay, and then we'll go over how to set up the proper amount of powder in a bit. Okay, so we have 4 dies. We're going to go over them each one by one in the order that they need to go. So first is our full-length sizing die and decapping die. So that's going to go in this first section. Now I have a Hornady lock and load bushing already on it, but you're going to want to put that on there, or for your press, if it just screws in, then just screw it in. Okay, so you're going to want to take this case, put it in your shell plate, and go up. And I heard it pop out the primer. If your decapping rod is not set properly, this won't make it go up or down. You have to, this just makes it tight, so you undo it, and then you can move the decapping rod up and down, and you can retighten it. This die is set up and ready to roll. So we're going to come down. Okay, now the next die is this case expanding die. Now on the Hornady press, you can use your powder dropper to do it, but you have to buy some extra stuff that doesn't come with the press. So I just used the Lee die that came with my die set. So essentially, you can see that guy in there, and that's going to expand the mouth of the case. And the reason you do that is because here's a bullet, here's my case. It is pretty much impossible to get that bullet to fit in there unless you expand the case. You're going to start far up, and you're going to go up, and at first nothing will happen. And so you'll come down, and it'll be the same as it was before, and nothing will fit. So then you're going to go down slowly until you get something that looks like this. Now this is going to be really hard to see, the non-expanded versus the expanded. It's just ever so slight, but what that does is it allows that bullet to fit in there. So you can see that bullet clearly fits in there, rather than this one that has not been expanded. Like, there's no way I could get that to fit in there. So that's all you're trying to do. If you don't have a progressive press, then use one of those hand deals. If you do have a progressive press, then use one of these plates. You put the primers in there, you shake them until they're all facing the same way. Once they're all facing the same way, you take this guy, you flip them over, and then you take your primer pickup tube and you pick them all up. Okay, once you get them all picked up, you just bring your tube over to your primer tube and pull the pin. Now make sure you push that top one out if you're not going to be doing more pistol. You're going to switch to rifle or whatever, because you don't want a pistol primer into a rifle. Okay, and then we'll test the primer dispenser, make sure that works. Go up, and down. Oh, I put it in the wrong spot, but you can see it has the primer there. Push forward. Okay, now we have the primer seated and the case expanded. So now we're ready for powder. So for powder, we're gonna put it in this bad boy. So now we got the powder in there. So to set this guy up, you'll see it pushes this thing, can't see that on top of the frame. So it pushes this thing up, but it's not going quite all the way up. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to lower this whole thing a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to undo. Okay, so now that I got this broken loose, all I'm going to do is I'm going to spin this down until this hits the top there. Okay, I can feel it hit the top there. So now I'm going to push this tight. And honestly, with these locking rings from Hornady, they're legit. You don't have to really use a tool. I mean, you can use a tool and get them real tight, but they have a little Allen nut in there, and it'll hold it tight. So now we have powder in there, but now you need to figure out how much powder you need. Okay, so once you figure out how much powder you need, the next step is going to be your bullet seating die. And this one's really not too bad. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to stick that guy in there and then stick your bullet in. And then you're going to want, when you start this, you're going to want to start this really high and then do a cycle, break out your calipers, and you'll get your max COL, your max case overall length from your reloading manual. This one is a little bit shorter than the max, but I know in my guns particularly, I have to load them a little bit shorter with this particular cast bullet so that it'll cycle really well. So hence, that's the reason this one's already shorter. So after you get this set to where it's going right around that max COL in your manual, you're going to want to do about 5 of these and then cycle them. So that's what I would do, is reload 5 of these and then cycle them in your gun to make sure they cycle really well. And what you're going to want to look for is you're going to want to look, so when you rack the slide, just let it fall hard on the bullet and make sure it goes all the way in, and then make sure you can just pull it and cycle the next round, because if you can't pull it and cycle the next round, then that means your bullet might not be seated back all the way and it's going to be engaging with the rifling. When I first started loading, my bullets weren't seated far enough and it was engaging with the rifling, and it wouldn't seat all the way, so I couldn't fire it, but I couldn't pull it back, so I had to push really hard, get it out, the bullet would get stuck in the barrel, the case would eject, powder would get everywhere. It was a horrible mess. So now I know before I reload a whole bunch, I seat them really far. I seat them, and when I think I got it right, I go cycle 5 of them in my gun to make sure all of them cycle perfectly in the gun that I'm going to use. So cycle them before you reload a whole bunch. Okay, then once you get it seated good and cycling good, the last one is going to be this crimp. As you can see, I've got some wear and tear on my press. Okay, so you're going to stick that in, and again, you're going to start this one high and work your way down. The reason you do that, you don't start low on the bullet seating or crimp, is because once you crimp it really hard or you seat your bullet really far, you can't pull it back out without grabbing your bullet puller. If you start high, you can always push it in a little bit more slowly by slowly until you got it right. So it'll make it a lot nicer. So with the crimp, it just barely engaged with it right there at the end. And then you honestly can't hardly tell at all, because like I read in that manual, you don't want much crimp at all on your 9mm bullets. So you really honestly can't hardly tell from a new case. I mean, barely I kiss into it just to keep my bullet from moving around. So that's pretty much it on how to set up all the dies. I'll be doing another video here in a few weeks on how to set up all the 380 dies, so make sure you subscribe so you see that. If you have any other questions on how to set up dies, please post them in the comments below, or if you have any tips for anybody else, things that you think I missed, please also put those in the comments below. Okay, thanks for watching.